until now what we have assumed is vision is a very physical phenomenon. It is light that is being reflected off of the object that I'm watching, that is allowing me to watch that object. Now, this assumes the completeness of this process. Just this physical process is enough to give the input to the brain to generate an experience. But when you bring in consciousness, you will see that it is not light that is illuminating the object, but consciousness. Light is generated as a byproduct of illumination. Light is just taking a free ride. Light is generated when unwatched thoughts are distorted. Light is an emergent phenomenon in consciousness. It is not what is allowing us to see things. Now, where do we see parallels for this? Now, when we walk into a room, a dark room, let's say we've been spending time in a bright area and we suddenly walk into a dark room and we look around, we don't see anything. We hardly see a few things. But when we spend a little more time, things begin to appear. Things that were not even visible a few moments ago, now you're able to see them. Now, how do we explain this? In our conventional understanding of things, we say eyes are getting adjusted to the light. That is why it is taking some time. Now, if you actually think about it, this is breaking the fundamental law of physicality. You're saying that your eyes are there and there is enough light for it to illuminate the object because you're not increasing the brightness for the objects to become visible later. The light is the same, the eyes are the same, and yet it is taking time for this eye to get adjusted to the light to be able to see things. Now, this is breaking a fundamental law of physics. We know that speed of light is the speed of perception. Hence, the moment light hits our eyes, at the speed of light, we should be able to see things immediately. What is this lag of time? Why is it taking time for my eyes to get adjusted? In fact, why should my eyes adjust? We have never answered these questions. If I am a physical phenomenon, if I am just a body, if my eyes are purely physical, when I'm in a dark room or when I'm in a bright area, light is illuminating things for me. So when I move into a dark room, how much of a light there is, my eyes should be able to pick up that much light and it should be able to show things. Now, what is this adjusting? Why should a physical system adjust? There is no explanation for this. We have simply assumed that, oh, it takes some time. It makes logical sense, but there is no mechanism that can explain this. Now, we can explain this using consciousness. It is because it is not light that is illuminating things, it is consciousness. Actualization is what is happening there. You are in a darker place and then you are actualizing things in exactly the same way you actualize things on the outside. Actualization is a process which is happening, and light is getting adjusted to accommodate that actualization. It is because I want to see things, I'm able to see things, and light is getting adjusted. Of course, this is not individual, this is not arbitrary, because there is no individual eye that is seeing things. So you can argue, say, what you're saying is, it's because you are seeing things exist. No, there is no individual you. The perceiver is always consciousness. That is why you cannot see things that are not there. You will only see things that are there because everything is happening within the same consciousness, within the same perceiver. So all things are connected. Why does it take time for things to begin to appear is because light is getting adjusted to accommodate for that actualization. So that actualization is generating the light that is allowing me now to see things clearly. This is the only way to explain how a moment ago something was in perpetual darkness, and now without me changing the brightness of the light is appearing brighter. How is it even possible? If light is completely physical, if eyes are totally physical, if the body is totally physical, this phenomenon should never happen. This is the same reason when we walk out in the night and look at the sky, initially we'll see a few stars, the brightest ones. But you spend some time looking at the dark sky, you will start seeing stars everywhere. It's almost like they emerge. Again, how do we explain this? Your eyes are getting adjusted to the light. What light are you talking about? This is a star that is so far away. How can you explain this by the adjustment of light? Which is a totally contradictory thing, breaking the laws of physics. Now, the only reason we have allowed this breaking of the laws of physics is because we didn't know what consciousness was. Because we could not explain what consciousness is, we did not have definitive proof for what consciousness is. We simply assumed that maybe somehow the brain is breaking all these rules. It is breaking the rules of physicality. But once we understand what consciousness is, once we understand that it's a physical phenomenon, it is a higher dimension, then we can see that these rules are not being broken at all. Not a single physics rule is being broken in the perception of life, in the experience of things, even the so-called subjective experience, what we regard as taste, touch, smell, something we cannot measure, even those things are not breaking the rules of physics, because the fundamental nature of reality is not space or time, but a mind. And inside the mind, all these things are allowed. So objectively, we can set up experiments where we can show that light is a byproduct of perception. Light is not what is creating perception. Light is not what is illuminating things. It is being adjusted according to actualization. So if you set up an experiment where you let an observer focus on something longer, of course, it has to be a sophisticated experiment if you don't want to bring human beings into the picture, because that's the only way you can objectively prove that consciousness exists. That focusing will alter light. That act of focusing will change the brightness necessary to see or not see that object. We will get a critical point where the object disappears. But when you correlate it with light, we will not find a correlation. We will see that there is always a small gap between the moment that object is disappearing and the light that is necessary for that to happen. And that gap is being filled by consciousness. Light cannot fill that gap. We can understand that the conscious observer, because actualization is happening, thoughts are being actualized as things, light is being created as a byproduct. The more you actualize, the more you focus on something, light alters. Now, if you set up a sophisticated experiment where you see you're not altering light, the brightness of light is exactly the same, and yet it is changing, that will prove that it is not light that is illuminating things, it is consciousness. And there are many other experiments you can devise. For example, we know that light is a distorted thought. When consciousness withdraws its awareness from its excited state and focuses on a particular thought, all those other thoughts that are now unwatched distort as light, which means light always bends around the focal point of the observer. Light can never occupy the straight line of interaction between the observer and the observed. Now, experientially, we know this because this is the reason we can never see light directly. We know there is light, but where have we seen light? We only see objects illuminated by light, but not light itself. That is because every time we focus, try to see light, we never see light because we only see the object. Because light is a peripheral distortion. That is why an observer can never see light straight. So if we can set up an experiment, a way to show that light never occupies the straight line of interaction between the observer and the observed, the only way that can be proven is because of the existence of consciousness. Now, if there is a line where light cannot exist, light cannot occupy that place, and if perception is still happening, you will have to conclude that there is a higher dimensional entity involved there, where even light cannot enter. Just like a black hole. Black hole is a region where light cannot enter. Light is not even allowed. And I've explained that black holes are basically conscious centers. They are higher dimensional, fourth dimensional center of consciousness. That is why everything happens around that center. That center itself is undistorted. Light cannot enter it. In exactly the same way, we should be able to prove that between the observer and the observed, there is a line where light cannot enter. Light has to move around that line because that line is occupied by consciousness, is occupied by a conscious observer who's directly focusing on the object. And conscious perception is always straight. However you're perceiving it, it's always in straight lines. It's never crooked. So my argument is light in reference to the perceiver, the objective observer, is always bent. Light is moving in a straight line in reference to the space-time fabric that it is creating. But it is not moving in the straight line in reference to the perceiver. So if we can set up an experiment and show this, we'll be able to see why light is not traveling in a straight line in reference to the observer. Unless we are able to find another explanation, we have to conclude that it's because of consciousness. And anyways, because I am predicting this result, if we are able to get this result, that proves the existence of consciousness because it's coming out of the prediction of my theory. Unless we find another reason for it, which is extremely unlikely because we're talking about light here. We will prove this. I don't have any doubt in my mind. A day will come when we will have no trouble whatsoever accepting that consciousness is immutable. Consciousness is absolute. Consciousness is everything. It is a higher dimension. And it is not being generated in these meatballs inside our head. It is the whole existence. Our entire visible universe, it is just a momentary blip, a perceptual blip in the vastness of consciousness.